Welcome into the Quest Number 9 podcast. My name is Seth Warner. Today we're doing a deeper dive into Kentucky and what to expect from an offensive and defense perspective this coming season, just because it's been kind of a slower period for Kentucky sports, in particular Kentucky basketball. So I wanted to take a deeper dive into what to truly expect for this season. We've talked in the past about what zoom action and some of these other things are, but I just wanted to take a deeper dive into what this will be and what the expectations are for the style of play and just different things. One big thing we've talked about in the past is called zoom action. We've talked about it's a down screen into a dribble handoff with the big at the top of the key. So we've talked about that. And another thing we haven't talked about is power plays. Power plays is where you draw a secondary defender. That's something new I learned and something I thought was very interesting, where the ability to finish power plays and do different things. And another principle for Coach Pope in their offense is spreading the floor quickly and getting to the corners. That was something last year's team did really well, and I expect this coming year's team to do really well also. It's spreading to the corners, allowing for space in the floor. And that's what Coach Pope's offense is predicated on, is space. Because if you don't have space, you don't have gaps. And that's where the power plays come in play, is where you're taking another defender away when you're attacking a gap or attacking a weakness in the defense. So when you attack that weakness, you're creating an open shot or open opportunity for one of your teammates. And another thing that Coach Pope is big on is making adjustments at different points on defense. Defensively, he's very much about, depending on what the other team is doing in their rhythm, changing the rhythm. And I think that's very interesting. And another thing that Coach Pope is not usually traditional in any of his things, but one thing he is traditional about is defensively with their press. They run a 2-2-1 press, is mostly, from the film I've watched, is what they use. And going back in more detail about the zoom action. Zoom action is basically a dribble handoff with a down screen. One of the reasons I think that's just insane is because it makes your defender trail and you can step back if they try to switch. It just puts the defense in such pressure because you're isolating that whole side. And you're usually going to have shooters on that opposite side, because with Pope's offense, everyone can shoot a little bit really outside of the big, because when you're doing those dribble handoffs, that makes that big guy step up because that guard can usually shoot. So that just puts a lot of pressure on the defense rotationally and takes away the rotation. And there's so many different ways that they can get into their zoom action. And there are other actions that are before and after they set their defense. The other team sets their defense. And they're very good at attacking early. That was one thing that Kentucky really didn't do in the past, is we would slow it down, especially after we got out of transition, because this team really gets into its offense quickly, within 10 to 15 seconds at most usually. And another thing I was talking about is power plays. Power plays is a very interesting way of saying that I've never heard. But I was listening to another podcast that was talking about it, and I thought it was very interesting. And they were talking about how that's drawing defenders and ability to attack gaps and just make them in a hard situation for the other team. And that was, I thought, very interesting. The ability to attack gaps and just put the defense at positions, and you have to finish power plays too. So if you drive and attack the paint and kick out, that doesn't always mean that that power play is completed. You still have to make the shot. And another thing that Coach Pope is really big on is quick decision making. That kind of goes up with power plays too, because the quick decision making, if you draw a defender and you don't make the right pass within like 5 seconds, usually that window's already closed because the defense is in a recovery state, trying to recover and rotate back. And it's just very little room for error when you're trying to attack those gaps and those seams in a defense, especially when you're not all the way to the rim, but you're just to the elbow. Let's say if you drive a gap to the elbow and you have that secondary defender comes. Usually, if you don't pass it immediately, it's probably going to get stolen. And like I was saying with them getting into quick offense, I think that's really good for being able to attack early. In the past, Kentucky was really good at getting quick up the floor. But this is a little bit different, I think, because they're getting into their offense quick. Because sometimes Kentucky would slow it down once they got into their sets. But I think that was something BYU last year did really good, was attacking early in getting in their sets early, because making it so that team's not completely on balance and always completely set. And another thing I thought was very interesting is on this podcast I was listening to, they were talking about rebounding and how when a team does really good at spacing and getting to the corners and doing those kind of things, usually you're rebounding lacking. But something I was thinking was, what if with the spacing and different things, it's not always a bad thing when you have more guys on the perimeter, because you might have one guy in the big in the middle, but they're still trying to put bodies on the perimeter defenders. So it's more of a one-on-one affair when rebounding when you're in that position, because if you get around your guy, you have a very high likelihood of getting the rebound because he's trying to come to you, and if you go to him first and get around him, the likelihood of you getting a rebound is very high. And another interesting thing I was saying about getting like to the corners is they're very good at having high IQ of when to slide over. Is one thing that Pope's teams in the past have really done well. Is let's say a big is trying to post up in the middle and the guard's on the wing and he's trying to post up at like the free throw line and back a guy down. He's always good about sliding over and getting to the corner and understanding that we don't have to crowd the one person. That's something, especially when Oscar we didn't do a great job of that, of understanding when to cut and like be around the ball and when to go out and just spread the floor. That was one of the hard things to just remember. And I was kind of saying about quick decision making too. With quick decision making, you got to understand right now they're trying to really preach their fundamentals and different things like that. And that's a lot what they're doing on their 3-on-3 is learning how to make quick adjustments and quick decisions. And another big thing with Coach Pope and his is the ability to come down and not always have a set play and just be able to run with space and understanding your positions. They're really good at having their 5 out and understanding that, okay, there's not someone in that gap, so where do I need to switch over or slide over so you have plenty of room? And that was one of my favorite things about seeing how their offense is always adjusting and everyone's always thinking. There's never a moment where a guy seems like he's just relaxed and not engaged. And with the BYU team, I thought it was very interesting that defensively they were always switching it up, it felt like. They were very adaptable, and defensively, coming out of timeouts, I've heard Mark Pope talk about it, they would show different defenses and very adjustable and will make different decisions. And I'm glad that Mark Pope is not like to the extreme on offense, that he does not like use a big at all, like a post up. At BYU, they had a big guy that would post up. It would be physical, but they would have the spacing around him to really benefit from that. And I think that was interesting too. So he's very adjustable to the roster. I think that will really help him in the long haul at Kentucky. That's one of the big things I brought from looking at a lot of his film and looking at that kind of stuff. Just because on defense and offense, he's very adjustable. His ability to use different press, play at different paces. I think being the aggressor is always the best. And that's how I feel Kentucky will play under Mark Pope. And with kind of the offense, I feel like he's very advanced for college basketball just because he plays in space so much and his players understand his system and then they play. It's not like they're just playing. They're playing within a system that they understand, but they're just making their own decisions in that system. So it's a wide enough it gives them enough flexibility that they can make their own plays and adjust on the fly, but it's still not letting them fall off the map to not do well if they need help along the way. And I feel like Kentucky will be able to keep up with if we don't have the biggest, fastest athletes, just because we keep the other team on their toes and off balance, it feels. And I was talking about a podcast that I got a lot of the information from. It's Sources A. They do one of the KSR podcasts. I'll put their video I got a lot of the information from in the description. And that's all from the Quest for Number 9 podcast. My name is Seth Werner, and you can find us at Quest for Number 9 on Instagram. And please like this video and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.